Today's video is sponsored by Hit Point Press and their September Big Bad Alchemic Rex, a mimic dragon resurrected by its kobold cultists. Alright guys, Jameson and Alex here. Today we're going to be talking about the College of Momentum Bard from Crystalpunk, which is, some would say, like a sci fantasy kind of theme setting.
Oh goodness.
Hey. So, if you're new to the channel or the series, what we're going to do is go through all the abilities gained in the subclass, then we're going to rate the roleplay, combat, and synergy based on the abilities gained in the subclass, how they improve the base class abilities.
That's right.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to be entered in our D&D Beyond Players Bundle giveaway.
Free stuff is indeed wonderful.
All that being said, let's get straight into it.
If you noticed my hand gesture when my counting, a lot of times I go for the German style 3 or sometimes the regular old English 3, but I went for the rock this time because this is College of Momentum Bard and it's all about the rock music.
Very punk rocky.
Very punk rock. The Ramones just starts blaring in my ear real bad with that way. Anyway, starting off at level 3, we get increasing the tempo. Your walking speed increases by 10 feet. Your movement is unaffected by non-magical difficult terrain. You gain proficiency with all vehicles.
Yeah, so that part might fall a little bit on campaign dependency.
But the rest of that's still viable, for sure. Also at level 3, we get Adrenaline Rush. When you roll for initiative and are not surprised, you can expend 1 use of your Bardic Inspiration, rolling the die and adding the result to your initiative roll and the initiative roll of an ally that can hear you within 30 feet of you. You can choose to use this feature after a creature makes its roll, but you can only use this feature once per combat.
Right, so those Assassin Rogues, Gloomstalker Rangers.
Yeah, anything that takes advantage of going in front of other things. Yes. Or even just you want to make sure your big beefy dude, your paladin, your barbarian can get in there to keep everybody else's to get the tension off of you first, Always help somebody else go first as well. Never a bad thing.
Level 6, we have Melody of Momentum. Creatures other than you that are affected by your counter charm have their speed increased by 10 feet. Additionally, when you use your counter charm, its range is 120 feet, and the performance lasts for 1 minute instead of until the end of your next turn. And just as a quick recap for counter charm, because you may have forgot what it is, because it doesn't come up that often a lot of times.
And it's the one bard ability is like, what's the other thing they get at base?
Inspiration, font of inspiration,
Jack of all trades.
You have Song of Rest,
magical secrets.
All the other counter charm is the last thing you think of usually. When you
forget you have it.
As an action, you start a performance that lasts until the end of your next turn. Of course, it's buffed with this subclass. But during that time, you and any friendly creatures within 30 feet have advantage on saving throws against being frightened or charmed. Yeah. Creature must be able to hear you to gain the benefit, and performance ends early if you're incapacitated or silenced, or if you end it. So, there you go. Also at level 6, we get Beat Drop.
This thing is big.
I think of Lucio immediately.
I mean,
Overwatch,
sure.
You kind of have to.
It's a fair comparison.
Your songs begin to grow and build to climatic drops. When you use your counter charm, you can choose to also start an instrumental build-up, which lasts until your counter charm ends. This build-up, as well as your counter charm, ends early if your turn starts and you or any of your allies haven't attacked a hostile creature since your last turn or taken damage from a hostile creature since then. Your build-up is represented by a pool of dice, each having an equal size to your Bardic Inspiration. Your build-up pool starts with 2 of such dice and gains 2 more at the end of each of your turns. When you or friendly creatures within 30 feet of you that can hear you deals damage with an attack or spell while you are in your build-up, you can use your reaction to end your build-up and your counter charm in a destructive drop. Roll all the damage dice in your build-up pool, adding it as extra thunder damage against one target of the attack or spell. When a target takes this damage, it must succeed on a strength save or be pushed 5 feet away from the attacker for each build-up die rolled and fall prone. Once you end your build-up in this way, you can't do it again until you finish a long rest, or you expend a spell slot of 3rd level or higher to start it again. So a lot going on with that, and we have lots of ways to break that down in the breakdown section in the ratings.
And finally, with the capstone, yes, you get there quickly with Bard, and not a lot of subclass stuff because your base class is one of the better ones. You get Exhilarating Beats. When you reach level 14, you master the art of musical momentum. You gain the ability to move along vertical surfaces and across liquids on your turn without falling during the move. Creatures affected by your counter charm also share this ability. Also, when a creature rolls a Bardic Inspiration die that you granted them, they can use their reaction to move up to half of their speed without provoking opportunity attacks. So much more simple capstone compared to the Beat Drop ability we got at 6.
Yes. So those are all the abilities, so we'll just jump straight into the rating portion. First up is the roleplay asterisk, as always. Talking about roleplay, we're talking about interacting with the world around you, interacting with NPCs, non-combat scenarios, avoiding combat, basically things outside of the initiative order. Not talking about your class fantasy, history, lore, background. That's on you as a player. We can't rate you, but we can rate the abilities gained in the subclass, how they might improve your potential in those roleplay scenarios. So, that being said, you do get a few things here, especially with movement. You get your bonus walking speed and being unaffected by difficult terrain. It helps. It is a little bit more on the niche side.
Yeah, for exploration, for travel, if you're going through a really thick jungle, maybe difficult terrain, or thick snow, things like that, it'll be environmental. It would affect you.
And again, too, vehicle proficiency is niche and campaign dependent as well, if there's even going to be vehicles in your campaign. Or, if you work with DM, maybe it's vehicles or mounts. If you're not doing vehicles.
That's something that I was about to bring up. It's like, I would totally if you're not going to have any kind of vehicles in a campaign at all, I would totally let that suffice for, ships.
Yeah, it's like bonuses to it.
And riding horses and things, That way it's not completely useless for somebody who's not going to be using the rest of this.
Right. And then, of course, you have, I think, the only other thing is the capstone, which it gives you the ability to walk across vertical surfaces on liquid water. You can run across water, and when you're using counter charm, you can give it to your whole party to run across a river, whatever. There's some uses for sure with that. But all that being said, that's it, really. All the rest of the stuff is dealing damage or giving you some extra buffs. So we went with a 2.5 out of 5 for the role play. Just a lot of movement, mobility. But even at that, it's a little bit on the niche side.
On the combat side of things, where obviously we get a lot more intense because, if you're playing rock music, there's going to be some aggression involved in that. There's no question. And this is definitely how this works here. Of course, the movement speed's always going to be a good thing. You can get around the battlefield better. I can struggle through that a little bit. And, of course, the non-difficult terrain or non-magical difficult terrain also works in your favor. The adrenaline rush, like Jameson said, is always going to be good because it's always good for you to go before your enemies you're fighting and an ally to be able to go first, but specifically for those subclasses that benefit from going early, your Assassin, Rogue, your Gloomstalker Rangers, all that kind of stuff. Those going earlier are going to love having that extra little bump to your initiative roll or their initiative roll, for that matter. Of course, the Melody of Momentum makes the counter charm not only better but usable in combat because of its pairing with the beat drop mechanic. And when we first started doing more and more of these subclasses and got to talk about the different damage types, we love Force, we love Psychic, we love Radiant. Didn't really realize we first started making those comments. You look at Thunder. Thunder's probably an very underrated damage type because very few things resist thunder damage. They just don't. It's resisted by very, very, very few things. So the damage type is solid. And the fact that there's nothing you have to do besides as long as you or somebody in your party hits something or gets hit by something. It's basically like a barbarian's rage in that fact of what keeps keeping it alive. And it's just going to keep stacking up. And you choose when you want to proc that amount of thunder damage. And it's when you get to that D10 hit die and that D12, not hit die, but inspiration die size, that the die size, that can be a lot of damage in a hurry. You don't have to wait for forever for it to stack up, but you get to 3 turns in, that's 6 D10 thunder damage to throw at somebody, or 6 D12 thunder damage. That's a noticeable amount. And you can have it push away as part of the strength save. It's a strength saving throw, which is not incredible, but it's not awful. It's not a Constitution save.
Right.
So, but again, even if they do save, they're still taking half that thunder damage. Do love that you can use it again. It's a 3rd level spell to use it again, but it's totgoing worth it if you're able to build up into 3 or 4 turns of it. It's for sure worth it because you compare things like Fireball doing 8d6 damage. You're going to get to 6d10, which is more than what Fireball can cap at just after 3 turns. And then finally, your capstone is going to give you and other people affected by your Melody Momentum beat drop mechanic counter charm are all going to get more movement speed and as part of that, and ability to get across vertical surfaces and liquids to really maneuver around battlefields, especially if you have some really clever battlefields set up by your DM. This will let you really throw an extra monkey wrench in that thing. Score-wise, we went with a 4 out of a possible 5. There are limitations to, like I said, the beat drop has to build up to be really effective, so you're having to wait for 3 or 4 turns for it to really be impactful, and it does only let you do it once per day without expending an extra resource. Do get some moment, some movement and other things like that, but it's really about that that beat drop's your big hitting thing. The rest it's more just movement stuff, and then that one-off initiative at the front. So there's some limitations to the amount of stuff you're getting to do, but it's very potent when you get to pop those things.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of go straight into synergy, and I'll just start off with the beat drop, because I think that's probably the most interesting thing with this.
Oh, for sure.
So I think with it is very, as Alex said, it can do a lot of damage in a hurry, but there is a cost to it. It takes your action to start the counter charm, it takes your reaction to spend it, and you have to wait multiple turns to let it build up. And while it's building up, it says if you or an ally, so if anyone in your party who's affected by the counter charm doesn't attack, like if they're incapacitated, if they're stunned, if they're paralyzed, it's going to end it. So you need to keep that in mind when stuff is happening, because you could build it up 3, 4, 5 turns, and you're waiting for this big beat drop, and then someone in your party gets incapacitated, and then you lose it.
Somebody cuts the power on you.
So there's...
We done blew a switch.
So there is definitely a risk-reward ratio in that has to be factored in. Now, it does make up for that with the amount of damage that can be done.
And a good damage type attack.
Yes. And then movement, of course, always helps exploration, combat helping you get around the battlefield, and allies. And of course, too, with it lasting like that, having those benefits of counter charm for a minute versus, till the end of a turn, it's going to be way more effective against things like dragons that have frightened,
especially in combat. Because normally with counter charm, you're like,
you wouldn't know when to ever use it, because it doesn't last long enough for you to use your action to justify guessing when the dragon is going to do some kind of frightened condition or something. So it was really awkward, and that's I think a lot of people didn't use it too often. At least definitely not in our setting. I mean, we're in our campaign, I think we're level 14, and our bard has never used it once.
Not one time.
It's because you never know when to use it.
It has to be very specific. It's only going to last for one round anyway.
Right. So with that, it is nice to see that synergy for an ability that is rarely ever seen by a lot of groups.
It's one of those things, to me, this is a great example of, I wouldn't necessarily have thought of this idea, but I'm glad somebody did.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're like, I'm trying to think of another great example off the top of my head, and I can't, but it's just like a lackluster ability that just seems like, okay, I see the purpose of it, but it just doesn't get used all that much.
Right.
But now you find a way to make it useful. I would like to see more abilities that target things like that.
Yeah,
and new subclasses, and also find ways to maybe use underpowered or underused spells. Maybe find ways to work that in kind of a similar vein too. I always love when people find creative ways to give buffs to underwhelming things.
Absolutely. And then, of course, getting the Bardic Inspiration buff as well to your capstone, giving some people some extra utility with that. So some good synergy for sure on here. But again, some limitations, a little bit of risk-reward. It does cost your action to do the counter charm as well. So it's going to take up one turn where, I mean, you're probably going to want to do it at the start of most combats, which it can feel a little, sad to take your first turn to just be like, I cast...
Hopefully you've got some kind of a bonus action spell you could use to kind of do something on your first turn, and then start building that up as far as that goes. But.
So that being said, we went with a 4 as well in the synergy. So a solid subclass, some definitely uniqueness. I love seeing, as Alex said as well, seeing upgrades to abilities that you don't really see hardly ever. So it is nice to see that kind of stuff. But that's going to wrap it up for today, guys. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you know when all of our new videos are coming out. Thanks again to our sponsors. Make sure you check out them in the link down below. And as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for our sponsors, Hit Point Press. Check out their big, bad bundles. Unique, cool monsters, history, lore, everything you need to throw these villains into your campaigns.
And it's a great way to get around your players that like to metagame, or if they do it accidentally, like I tend to do at times. Maybe they think they know what this monster is by the description. They can create some fun opportunities and unique things to throw at even your most experienced players would not see coming.
So check out the link in the description down below.